The Keltharian ship moved slowly through space toward the human vessel. Ambassador Vex then stood by the window, watching the warship grow larger with each passing moment. His aide stood beside him, reading information from a small device in her hands. The human ship looked different from what Vex then expected. It was big and covered in thick metal plates. Weapons stuck out from almost every part of the hull. The ship looked rough and dangerous, not smooth and elegant like Keltharian vessels. Vex then had brought 12 specialists with him. Some were engineers who understood how ships worked. Others were military experts who studied weapons in combat. They all wanted to learn about human technology. The Keltharians were an old civilization with advanced ships. Humans were new to space travel. They had only been flying between stars for 200 years. But somehow human military forces won every battle they fought. The council wanted to know why. The shuttle docked with the human ship. A door opened and they walked through into a wide corridor. The hallway was bigger than it needed to be. Everything looked strong and heavy. Captain John Hayes waited for them. He was a short man with gray hair and calm eyes. A woman stood next to him. "Welcome to the Defiant," Hayes said. He held out his hand in the human greeting style. "I am Captain Hayes. This is Commander Lisa Grant." Vex then shook the captain's hand. "Thank you for allowing us to visit your ship, Captain. We are eager to learn." Hayes smiled, but something in his smile made Vex then feel nervous. "I think you will find our ships very interesting. Shall we begin the tour?" They started in the engine room. The Keltharian engineers immediately began examining everything. They used scanning devices to measure and record data. After a few minutes, the chief engineer looked confused. "This design makes no sense," he said to his assistant. "The power system is not efficient. There are too many backup systems. Why do they need so many extra parts?" A human officer heard the comment. His name was Danny Walsh, and he was the ship's chief engineer. He had a friendly smile and oil stains on his hands. "We like backups," Danny said. "Our philosophy is simple. If something can break, it will break at the worst time possible. But you lose so much efficiency," the Keltharian engineer said. Danny shrugged. "We would rather have a ship that works at 80% power all the time than a ship that works at 95% until one part breaks. Then it does not work at all. Every important system on this ship has at least 3 backups. Most have 5. The Keltharian engineers looked at each other. This seemed wasteful and primitive. But as they studied the systems more carefully, they began to see the logic. The human systems were not beautiful, but they were very tough. Meanwhile, other members of the delegation visited the weapons room. What they saw there bothered them even more. "These are kinetic weapons," one of the military analysts said. He was looking at what humans called a railgun. "These are just metal throwers. Why do you use such old technology when energy weapons are better?" The human weapons officer was a man named Paul Bennett. He raised one eyebrow. "Old technology? Maybe. But these metal slugs go right through shields like they are not even there. Energy weapons are good until someone has strong shields or special armor. A piece of metal moving at incredible speed does not care about defenses. But you can only carry limited ammunition," the analyst said. Paul grinned. "That is why we also have lasers, plasma cannons, missiles, and a few other surprises. We believe in having options." As the day went on, the Keltharian delegation became more and more uncomfortable. Everything about the human ship was wrong by their standards. The corridors were too wide. The armor was too thick. The weapons were too many. There were redundant systems everywhere. Even the rooms where crew members slept seemed designed with the idea that the ship would be heavily damaged. That evening, the delegation met in their guest quarters to discuss what they had seen. "This ship is strange," the chief engineer said. "It is overbuilt and under-optimized. It wastes space and resources on backups that should never be needed. And yet," Vex then said quietly, "humans have won every major battle they have fought since joining the galactic community. How is this possible?" Nobody had an answer. The military commander spoke up. "I want to ask Captain Hayes to show us a combat simulation tomorrow. I want to see how these systems work under pressure." Vex then thought about this. It was an unusual request, but the treaty allowed them to make reasonable requests. "Very well. I will ask him tonight." When Vex then found Captain Hayes, he made the request. The captain looked at him carefully for a long moment. That strange smile appeared on his face again. "A combat simulation? Sure, we can do that. How realistic do you want it?" "As realistic as possible. the military commander said quickly. "We want to understand how your ship performs in actual combat." Hayes looked at Commander Grant. She nodded slightly. "All right then. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we will run a standard combat scenario for you. But I should warn you, it might be intense. You will need to stay in the observation room where it is safe." "We understand," Vex then said. As the Keltharians walked back to their rooms, they did not notice the brief conversation between Hayes and Grant in the hallway. "Do you think they can handle it?" Grant asked. Hayes laughed softly. "They asked for realistic. We will give them realistic. Prepare the crew for a level 4 combat drill. Let us show our guests what the Defiant can really do." Grant smiled. "Should I warn them that level 4 includes simulated hull breaches and casualty scenarios?" "They wanted to examine a human warship," Hayes said. "Tomorrow they will understand exactly what that means." Vex then lay in his bed that night, unable to sleep. Something about the human ship bothered him. It was not just the unusual design or the excessive weapons. It was something deeper. The humans seemed to expect disaster. They built their ships as if they knew terrible things would happen. Most civilizations built ships hoping nothing would go wrong. Humans built ships knowing everything would go wrong. He wondered what tomorrow's simulation would show them. Part of him was curious. Part of him was afraid. The humans had agreed to the demonstration very easily. Too easily. Captain Hayes had smiled when they asked. That smile had not been friendly. It had been the smile of someone who knew a secret. Vex then stared at the ceiling and wondered what secret the humans were about to reveal. The next morning, all 12 Keltharians gathered in the observation room. This room had special windows that let them see the bridge below. They could watch everything but stay safe. Vex then and his team sat down and prepared their recording devices. They wanted to document everything they saw. Captain Hayes stood in the center of the bridge. His command chair was surrounded by stations where crew members worked. Everyone seemed relaxed and calm. "Captain Hayes?" Vex then spoke through the communication system. "We are ready when you are." Hayes nodded toward the observation room. "Understood, Ambassador. Crew, start combat simulation program Delta 7. Full realism mode." Commander Grant's voice rang out across the bridge. "All hands, this is the executive officer. Combat simulation drill is now active. All crew members must treat this as a real situation. Set condition 1 throughout the ship." Immediately everything changed. The lights turned red. Alarm sounds filled the air for a moment, then settled into a steady rhythm. The relaxed feeling disappeared instantly. "Contacts detected," called out a young officer named Kevin Shaw. He was watching the sensor displays. "Multiple targets. Looks like Krellian raiders. 6 ships, frigate class." In the observation room, the chief engineer leaned forward. "Krellian raiders? Those are very dangerous. Why would they use such a difficult scenario?" The simulation had just started, but the Defiant was already reacting. Crew members moved quickly and smoothly. They called out information and confirmed orders. "Weapons ready," announced Lieutenant Paul Bennett. "Railguns loaded, missiles ready. Defense systems active. Shields to maximum power," Commander Grant ordered. "Set power for combat mode." Hayes remained calm in his chair. His fingers were pressed together as he thought. "Helm, turn the ship. Point our thick armor toward them. Launch sensor drones." The ship turned. The Keltharians felt a slight pull as the gravity system struggled with the aggressive movement. Through the windows they could see the bridge crew working faster now. "Enemy ships are getting closer," Shaw reported. "They are splitting up. Classic Wolfpack attack pattern." "Understood," Hayes said. "Send target information to weapons. Bennett, you are free to fire when ready." "Yes, Captain." "I have a lock on the lead ships." The ship shook as the railguns fired. Inside the ship, the magnetic systems created a deep vibrating sound that went through everything. "Direct hit on target 1, Bennett reported. "Target 2 is dodging. 3 and 4 are trying to get around us." "They are trying to hit our sides where the armor is thinner," Grant said. "Helm, roll us 40 degrees. Keep our thick armor facing them." The ship rotated again. The Keltharian delegation held onto their seats. This was much more aggressive than any combat they had seen from other species. Then things got worse. "Multiple missiles detected." Shaw's voice rose. "I count 20, no 30 incoming. Point defense, stop them," Hayes ordered. His voice stayed level and calm. The Defiant's defensive weapons opened fire. Automated lasers and small railguns created a protective bubble around the ship. On the displays, the Keltharians watched missiles disappear one by one, but not all of them. 3 missiles getting through, Bennett announced. Brace for impact. All hands, brace for impact, Grant's voice echoed through the ship. The ship rocked hard. In the observation room, the Keltharians were thrown against their safety restraints. Alarm sounds screamed. Damage report, Hayes called out. Simulated hits on Deck 7 and 8, a damage control officer said. Hull breach in Section 12. Simulated casualties reported. Emergency doors holding. What happened next shocked the Keltharian observers completely. Instead of running away or trying to escape, Captain Hayes leaned forward. Helm full speed ahead. Take us straight at them. Grant, transfer extra power to forward shields. Captain? The military commander stood up in the observation room. They are charging directly at the enemy? That is suicide. But the Defiant surged forward, racing toward the enemy ships. The bridge crew worked even harder now. Firing Pattern Omega, Hayes commanded. Hit them with everything we have. The ship unleashed massive firepower. Railguns, missiles, lasers, and plasma cannons all fired together. The violence was incredible. The Defiant shook constantly from its own weapons. Target 1 destroyed. Target 2 critically damaged. Target 3 is evading. Bennett called out rapidly. 4 and 5 are firing back. More impacts. The ship bucked and shook. Simulated fire on Deck 3, damage control reported. Casualty count rising. We have lost power to Sections 9 through 12. Reroute through backup systems. Chief Danny's voice came from engineering. Switching to secondary power grid. The Keltharians watched in amazement as the human crew simply adapted. Systems failed and they switched to backups. Those backups failed and they switched to other backups. The ship kept fighting no matter what happened. Target 3 destroyed, Bennett announced with satisfaction. 4 is running away. 5 and 6 are trying to gain distance. No, Hayes said coldly. We do not let them regroup. Helm, chase them. Bennett, focus all fire on Target 6. Destroy it quickly. The Defiant hunted down the running enemy ships like a predator. Despite all the damage it had taken, despite all the simulated casualties, it would not stop. Direct hit. Target 6 destroyed, Bennett reported. Hull breach expanding on Deck 8. Damage control warned. We are venting atmosphere. Emergency teams responding. In the observation room, one of the Keltharian aides had turned pale. They are still fighting. They have taken terrible damage and they are still attacking. Vex then could not speak. He just watched in shock. Targets 4 and 5 are trying a coordinated attack, Shaw called out. They are coming back. Let them come, Hayes said. There was something frightening in his voice now. Something dangerous. This ends now. Bennett, prepare special firing solution. Grant, I want full power to weapons. Take it from wherever you need to. Taking power from life support in non-essential areas, Grant confirmed, giving you 90 seconds of maximum firepower. That will be enough. The final fight lasted 40 seconds. The 2 remaining enemy ships in the Defiant closed to very short range. Weapons fire from both sides lit up the space between them. The Defiant took more hits. Alarms screamed. Crew members shouted damage reports and then it was over. Targets 4 and 5 destroyed, Bennett announced. All threats eliminated. The red lighting stayed on. Hayes sat back in his chair. Damage report. Give me the real numbers. Commander Grant read from her screen. Simulated casualties are 43 dead, 71 wounded. Hull breaches on 5 decks. Power working at 60%. Weapons at 75%. 2 shield generators offline. Estimated repair time is 18 hours for critical systems. 3 weeks for full repairs. Hayes nodded. Acceptable. End combat stations. Begin damage control and rescue operations. Medical teams to casualty locations. Engineering, I want power restored within 1 hour. Yes, Captain. Many voices responded together. Only then did the red lighting change back to normal. The alarms stopped. The bridge crew began their post-combat work with the same efficiency they had shown during battle. Hayes turned his chair toward the observation room. Ambassador Vex, then, I hope that was informative. In the observation room, everyone sat in shocked silence. Finally, Vex then managed to activate the communication system. Captain Hayes, that level of damage, your casualty count, would be unacceptable to avoid. Hayes finished the sentence. Yes, we know. That is why we train for it. The military commander found his voice. You were willing to accept over 100 casualties to destroy 6 frigates? That is a terrible exchange. You should have run away and called for help. Hayes stood and walked toward the observation window. Commander, in human military history we learned a hard lesson. If you are not willing to take casualties, you have already lost. Our ships are designed to take damage and keep fighting. Our crews train to work through chaos and disaster. When we fight an enemy, we commit fully. But the cost, the chief engineer whispered, the cost of losing is higher, Commander Grant added. Every human warship has one purpose, to win no matter what. We over-engineer because things will break. We train for casualties because people will die. We build backup systems because we plan to keep operating long after any reasonable ship would have retreated. Hayes looked directly at Vex then. You wanted to examine a human warship, Ambassador. But to truly understand us, you need to know this. Our ships are not just machines. They are statements of will. When a human warship enters combat, it is not looking for a good trade. It is looking for total victory, and it will sacrifice itself if necessary to achieve it. The observation room stayed silent. We will break for lunch, Hayes said. This afternoon, if you still want to see more, we can continue. As the captain left the bridge, Vexes then turned to his delegation. Everyone looked shaken and disturbed. Are you all thinking what I am thinking? The military commander asked quietly. Vex then nodded slowly. Yes, we need to see more. We need to understand how deep this philosophy goes. But in his hearts, the ambassador was beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They had not come to examine a ship. They had come to examine a weapon built by a species that thought about war in a completely different way than any other race in the galaxy, and they were only beginning to. After lunch, the Keltharian delegation made a new request. They wanted to talk with crew members instead of looking at more technology. Captain Hayes agreed and arranged for small groups to meet in the mess hall. Vex then sat across from Chief Engineer Danny Walsh and two of his staff. One was a strong woman named Karen White. The other was a young man named Jake Morris. They were eating food from the ship's kitchen. I need to understand something, Vex then began. This morning showed us that your ship can take incredible damage and keep fighting. But the crew, how do you work knowing that so many casualties are considered normal? Danny put down his fork and looked at his team before speaking. It is not that we think it is normal, Ambassador. It is that we think it is unavoidable. Karen leaned forward. She had scars on her arms from old injuries. Every person on this ship volunteered to be here. We train all the time for the worst situations. When you asked about all those backup systems in engineering, that is so when we take damage, not if we take damage, I can keep the ship running. But the mental burden, Vex then said. In Keltharian military service, we expect perhaps 5% casualties over an entire war. You just simulated 20% in a single battle. Jake spoke up. He looked very young to Vex then. Sir, with respect, that is because you are trying not to lose. We are trying to win. There is a difference. Explain that to me, Danny answered. Humans have something we call acceptable losses. It sounds harsh, but here is the truth. If we go into battle planning for 0 casualties, we will fight carefully. We will hesitate. We will miss chances. And in space combat, hesitation gets everyone killed. So you accept deaths before they even happen? Vexthen's aide sounded horrified. No, Karen said firmly. We prepare for them. Every system on this ship assumes that half the crew might be dead or injured, and the ship still needs to work. Every crew member is trained to do multiple jobs, so if someone dies, someone else can take their place. We do not accept death, Ambassador. We defy it by making sure it does not stop us. Jake added something else. Plus, Captain Hayes taught us 3 rules of human ship design. 1. Assume everything will break. 2. Assume half your crew will become casualties. 3. Design the ship to win anyway. Vex then sat back thinking about this. Across the room he could see other members of his group having similar intense conversations with human crew. Members, the military commander was talking with Lieutenant Paul Bennett and his weapons team. Your weapons are excessive, the commander stated. You have 7 different weapon systems. Most species use 2 or maybe 3 at most, Paul grinned. And when they fight an enemy who has defenses against those 2 or 3 weapons, what do? They change their tactics. We change our weapons, Paul countered. Look, every enemy is different. Some have great shields. Some have thick armor. Some are fast. Some use electronic tricks. We carry many weapon types because we never know what we will face. But maintaining so many different systems is complicated. It is worth it when we can always find something that works. Another officer named Amy Ross said, Last year we fought pirates using advanced technology. Their shields could stop every energy weapon we had. You know what does not care about shields? A 50-kilogram piece of metal moving at incredible speed. The commander thought about this. So you give up efficiency for options. We give up nothing, Paul corrected him. We just refuse to be in a situation where our weapons are useless. Human philosophy is simple. Bring enough options that something will always work. In another part of the room, the chief engineer was talking with Commander Lisa Grant. Commander, I have been studying your ship systems all day, and something troubles me. Your design assumes disaster at every moment. It seems almost paranoid. Grant smiled, but it was not a warm smile. Engineer, let me tell you a story. 50 years ago, Earth sent out its first deep space ship called Europa. Beautiful ship with the best technology we had then. The designers were proud of how efficient everything was. 6 months into the mission, one coolant leak caused everything to fail. The ship was lost with everyone on board because when that one system broke, it took 3 other systems with it, and there were no alternatives. She paused to make sure he was listening. The next ship we built was called Endeavor. It had triple backups on every important system. It was less efficient, used more space, cost more to build. On its first trip, it hit debris we did not know was there. Over 40% of its systems were damaged. But because of all those backups, it made it home. Everyone survived. So you design for disaster because you have experienced disaster, the engineer said slowly. No, Grant corrected. We design for disaster because we know disaster is coming. It is not paranoia when you are right. Human ships have faced system failures, attacks, strange space problems, and just bad luck. We learned that hope is not a plan. Preparation is a plan. But surely there is a middle way between our efficiency and your excessive preparation. Grant shook her head. You know what we call a middle way in human ship design? A compromise. And compromises kill crews. We would rather waste resources on backups we never use than lose a single person because we were too worried about efficiency. As the afternoon continued, a pattern appeared in all these conversations. Every human crew member, no matter what their job, expressed the same basic idea. Prepare for the worst, train for disaster, and build systems that work when everything goes wrong. That evening, the Keltharian delegation met again in their rooms. The mood was serious and worried. They are crazy, one of the military analysts said. Their entire approach to war is based on accepting damage and casualties that would make any other species surrender. Not crazy, the military commander said quietly. Just different. Terrifyingly different. The chief engineer brought up a holographic display. I have been comparing their design to ours. By our measurements, every human warship is overbuilt by about 40%. That does not even count the backup systems. If they built ships our way, they could have 40% more ships for the same resources. But each of their ships is worth more in battle, another analyst noted. Did you see the results in today's simulation? 6 enemy ships destroyed for the loss of 1 destroyer with moderate casualties. If that destroyer had been one of ours, we would have lost the entire ship with that much damage. Vex then had been quiet, thinking about everything they had learned. Finally, he spoke. We came here thinking we would learn about human technology, maybe find some new ideas we could use. But that is not what this is really about, is it? The others looked at him. This is about philosophy, he continued. Humans do not have better technology. By most measures, their systems are actually less advanced than ours. But their entire approach to war is different. They do not build ships to avoid losing. They build ships to guarantee winning. At any cost, his aide added. At any cost they think necessary, Vex then corrected. That is the part that frightens me. They have calculated exactly how much sacrifice they are willing to make. And they have designed their entire military around being able to take that level of loss and continue fighting. The military commander stood and walked around the room. The council needs to understand this. Humans are not just another space species with ships and weapons. They are something else. They approach war like it is a math problem, calculate acceptable losses, build in systems to handle those losses, train crews to work through disaster, and commit completely to victory. There is something else, the chief engineer said. I talked with several engineers. Every one of them discussed scenarios we would never even think about. Fighting after main power is lost, working with half the crew dead, continuing combat with holes in the hull on multiple decks. These are not emergency plans to them. They are normal operating procedures. Because they expect all of those things to happen, one of the scientists realized. They design their ships assuming they will be half destroyed and still need to fight. Vex has then made a decision. Tomorrow I want to request one more demonstration. I want to see what happens when things go truly wrong, beyond even what we saw today. Are you sure? His aide asked. I think we have already learned more than the council expected. That is exactly why we need to see more, Vex then replied. The council sent us here thinking humans were just good fighters. We need to show them the truth. Humans are something we have never seen before, a species that has made a weapon out of refusing to quit. The next morning, Vex then made his request to Captain Hayes. The captain listened carefully, then nodded. You want to see our damage control and emergency response in action. Not simulated combat, but simulated disaster scenarios. Yes, Vex then confirmed. We need to understand how your crew responds when multiple systems fail at the same time. Hayes studied the ambassador for a long moment. Ambassador, what you are asking to see is not pleasant. We train our crews for scenarios that most species would think are impossible to survive. Are you certain? We are certain. Very well, Hayes said. Tomorrow morning, we will run what we call a no-win scenario. It is designed to test how crews respond when victory is impossible. A scenario designed to be impossible to win? Vex then's aide asked. What is the point? Commander Grant answered. The point is not to win. The observation room was crowded the next morning. Every member of the Keltharian delegation wanted to see what Captain Hayes called the no-win scenario. The mood was tense and fearful as they took their seats. Captain Hayes spoke to them through the communication system before starting. Ambassador, what you are about to see is a training scenario we run every 3 months for senior officers and once a year for all crew. The scenario is designed to be impossible to win. No matter what decisions are made, the ship will be lost. The purpose is to test decision-making under extreme stress and to keep everyone ready for worst-case scenarios. Why would you train for certain defeat? The military commander asked, confused. Because sometimes defeat comes anyway, Commander Grant replied from the bridge. And when it does, we need to know our people will keep fighting, keep thinking, and keep trying to save lives until the very end. Vex then leaned forward. Proceed, Captain. All hands, this is the captain, Hayes announced. We are starting No-Win Protocol 7. All crew members, treat this as real. There will be no advanced knowledge of what happens. Command staff, you have control. I will be watching. Hayes stepped away from the command chair. Commander Grant moved to take his place. Another officer took the second-in-command position. The rest of the bridge crew stayed at their stations, not knowing what was coming. Simulation begin, Hayes said quietly. The scenario started normally. The Defiant was on patrol when a distress call came through. Captain, we are receiving a distress signal from a civilian transport, Lieutenant Shaw reported. The ship Meridian is under attack by unknown hostiles. They need immediate help. Grant checked her displays. Where are they? In the Epsilon sector, about 40 minutes away at maximum speed. Do long-range sensors show anything between us and them? Shaw worked his controls. Negative. Path is clear. Grant made her decision. Helm. Plot course to the Meridian's location, maximum speed. All hands to battle stations. The Defiant surged forward. In the observation room, Vex then noted the quick decision. A ship in trouble, help on the way. Normal procedure. 35 minutes later, as they got close to the location, things began to go wrong. Multiple contacts, Shaw announced, his voice sharp. I am reading 12, no 15 hostile ships around the Meridian. 15? The second officer sounded surprised. That is a major attack force. Weapons ready, Grant ordered. Communications, contact the Meridian and tell them help is coming. No response from Meridian, the communications officer reported. Their signal is active, but they are not answering. Could be damage to their communications, the second officer suggested. As the Defiant got close enough to fight, everything went wrong at once. The hostiles are scattering, Shaw called out. New contacts. Multiple new contacts appearing all around us. I count 20, 30, 40 ships. It is a fleet. What? Grant stared at her display in shock. That is impossible. We would have detected them. They must have been hiding, the second officer said. Captain, we have jumped into a trap. In the observation room, the chief engineer grabbed Vex then's arm. They walked into an ambush. 40 ships against one destroyer. They need to run immediately. But on the bridge, Grant was already thinking fast. Helm, Calculate jump coordinates for immediate escape. Weapons, give me targets on any ships blocking our way out. Jump drive is powering up, the helmsman reported. 30 seconds until ready. Incoming fire, Shaw shouted. The ship shook under multiple impacts. Alarm screamed. Shields holding at 70%, someone reported. Multiple ships targeting us. Jump drive ready in 15 seconds, the helmsman counted down. Then disaster struck. Enemy ships are using jump blockers, Shaw announced, his voice rising. We are being jammed. Jump drive will not work. A deadly silence fell for perhaps 2 seconds. Then Grant spoke, her voice completely calm. Communications, send emergency signal. Maximum power on all frequencies. Let everyone within 50 light years know we are under attack. Include our situation. Yes, Captain. Signal transmitting. Weapons fire at will. Priority targets are any ship with jamming equipment. Destroy those blockers. Firing. The Defiant opened fire with everything. The bridge shook constantly as weapons fired and enemy shots hit the shields. We destroyed one jammer, weapons reported. 2 more are activating to replace it. Enemy fleet is closing in, Shaw called out. They are surrounding us. The second officer pulled up a tactical display. Captain, recommend we move toward the Meridian. If we can put the civilian ship between us and some of the enemy, we might take less fire. Grant nodded. Do it, helm, full speed toward the Meridian. Maybe we can still save survivors. As the Defiant charged toward the civilian ship, the situation got worse. The enemy fleet converged, pouring fire into the destroyer. Shields began to fail. Shield generators 3 and 4 are down. A damage report came through. Hull breaches on decks 9 and 10. Move power to remaining shields, Grant ordered. All non-essential people to emergency shelters. They reached the Meridian. What they found was terrible. The Meridian is destroyed, Shaw reported quietly. It is just wreckage. No life signs, it was bait, the second officer said. This whole thing was a trap from the start. In the observation room, the Keltharians watched in growing horror as the simulation continued. The Defiant was completely surrounded, shields failing, taking hits from dozens of ships at once. Why do they not surrender? One of the analysts cried out. The battle is lost. But on the bridge, surrender did not seem to exist. Port shields are gone, weapons announced. Taking direct hull hits, fire on deck 6. Casualties being reported from multiple sections. We have lost main power to forward weapons. Grant processed each report, making fast decisions. Switch forward weapons to backup power. Damage control teams to deck 6. Weapons, focus all fire on the smallest enemy ships. Let us reduce their numbers. Captain, we have 160 enemy contacts now, Shaw said. More are still coming. Then we keep shooting until we run out of targets or ammunition, Grant replied coldly. Whichever comes first. The Defiant kept fighting. Despite terrible damage, despite hopeless odds, the crew kept working. When equipment exploded, another crew member took over. When a section was exposed to space, the doors sealed automatically and the crew worked around it. Engineering reports main power is failing, someone called out. Reactor is going critical. How long? Grant demanded. 10 minutes, maybe less. Can we overload it on purpose? Take some of these enemies with us? Chief Danny's voice came through from engineering, strained but determined. Give me 5 minutes and I can turn this ship into a bomb that will destroy everything within 10 kilometers. Do it, Grant ordered. All hands, this is the bridge. We are starting self-destruct. All personnel not needed for combat, get to the escape pods now. This is not a drill. You have 4 minutes to leave the ship. In the observation room, Vexthen's aide was crying. They are still fighting. Even now they are still fighting. On the bridge, crew members who were not immediately needed for combat stood and headed for the escape pods. But over half the bridge crew stayed at their stations. Captain, you should go, the second officer said to Grant. I am not leaving while my people are still here, Grant replied. Besides, someone needs to fly this ship into as many enemy vessels as possible when we explode. The final 3 minutes were chaos. The Defiant's armor was breached in many places. Fires burned through several decks. Life support failed in whole sections. The casualty count climbed past 200, then 300, and still they fought. Escape pods away, someone reported. We got about 60% of non-combat crew off. Good, Grant said. Helm, plot ramming course toward that carrier in the center of their formation. Let us make this count. With pleasure, Captain. The Defiant, burning and broken, turned toward the largest enemy ship and accelerated. Enemy fire got heavier. trying to stop the wounded destroyer before it could get close. Hull integrity at 15%. Damage control reported. We are breaking apart. Just a little farther, Grant whispered. They almost made it. When the reactor finally exploded, the Defiant was less than 5 kilometers from the enemy carrier. The simulation showed a massive explosion that destroyed the destroyer and heavily damaged 7 nearby enemy ships. The displays went dark. The red alert lighting faded to normal. On the bridge, the crew members who had stayed at their posts slowly stood up, many of them shaking from adrenaline. Captain Hayes stepped back to the center of the bridge. Simulation complete. Well done, everyone. Commander Grant, excellent work. Your decision to weaponize the reactor failure saved 60% of your crew and destroyed a significant part of the enemy fleet. Grant nodded tiredly. Thank you, sir. Though I wish we could have saved more. In a no-win scenario, you saved who you could and hurt the enemy as much as possible. That is all anyone can do. Hayes turned to the observation room. Ambassador Vex, then, I hope that was educational. In the observation room, the Keltharian delegation sat in shocked silence. Finally, Vex then stood on shaking legs and activated the communication system. Captain Hayes, your crew just experienced their own deaths. In simulation, yes, but still. And they never stopped. They never surrendered. They fought to the last possible moment and then turned there. 3 days later, Ambassador Vex then stood before the Keltharian Council in their grand chamber on the homeworld. The room was beautiful with elegant design and soft lighting. It seemed absurdly peaceful after what he had seen aboard the Defiant. The council had 15 members who represented the major groups in Keltharian society. They sat in elevated seats looking down at where Vex then stood. Behind him, a holographic display waited to show the information his team had collected. Council Prime Severeth, the oldest member, spoke first. Ambassador Vex, then, you requested this emergency meeting to present your findings from inspecting the human warship Defiant. The Council is eager to hear what you learned. We hope you bring us useful information about human military capabilities. Vex then looked back at his delegation in the observer section. His aide gave him an encouraging nod. He took a breath. Council members, I need to begin with a warning. What my team and I saw aboard the Defiant has completely changed our understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The information I am about to present may be disturbing. Several council members looked at each other in confusion. Council Prime Severeth frowned.
Ambassador, we sent you to examine a ship, not to make dramatic statements.
Please proceed with your technical report. That is the problem, Council Prime, Vex then said. This cannot be just a technical report. Yes, I will present our findings on human technology, but the real discovery we made was not about technology at all. He activated the holographic display, bringing up detailed images of the Defiant. Let me start with the technical aspects as requested. The human destroyer-class warship has several unusual design features. For the next 20 minutes, Vex then explained the engineering analysis. He showed the excessive backup systems, the strong but inefficient power systems, the multiple redundancies for every critical function. He displayed the weapons with their confusing variety of types. He presented the armor specifications that gave up speed for protection. Council member Draltok, who led the military committee, interrupted. Ambassador, these specifications suggest the humans build warships that are heavy, slow, and wasteful of resources. By our calculations, they could build 40% more ships if they removed these redundancies. That is correct, Council member, Vex then acknowledged. And that was our first assessment, too. But then we saw these systems in action. He brought up footage from the combat simulation. The Council watched as the Defiant fought the 6 enemy raiders. They saw the damage the human ship took, heard the casualty reports, and saw the aggressive way Captain Hayes fought the battle. When the simulation ended, silence filled the chamber. 20% casualties in a single battle, another council member said slowly. And they consider this normal? Not normal, Vex then corrected. Expected. This is the key difference. Humans do not design their ships hoping to avoid casualties. They design them assuming casualties will happen, and making sure the ship can keep fighting afterward. He pulled up comparison charts. Council members, I have prepared casualty projections for various scenarios. If a Keltharian ship of equal size took the damage the Defiant took in that simulation, we estimate 95% crew casualties and total ship loss. The Defiant suffered 20% casualties and remained able to fight. Because of the redundancies, the chief engineer spoke up from the observer section. I have reviewed every part of that ship's design. Every critical system has 3 to 5 backups. When humans build a warship, they are not building one ship. They are building 5 ships that happen to use the same hull. Council Prime Severeth leaned forward. This is interesting, Ambassador, but I am not sure why it needed an emergency meeting. So humans build tough ships. This is useful information but not alarming. Vex then closed his eyes briefly. Council Prime, the ship design is just a symptom. What we discovered is far more important. Humans have a completely different way of thinking about war than any other species in the galactic community. He brought up new data. With the Council's permission, I would like to show footage from the second demonstration we saw. A training scenario the humans call a no-win scenario. For the next 30 minutes, the Council watched the impossible situation play out. They watched the trap close around the Defiant. They saw the hopeless odds. They saw the crew fighting beyond any reasonable hope of survival. And they watched the final decision to turn the dying ship into a weapon. When it ended, the chamber stayed silent for a long time. Finally, Council member Zelnara spoke. She was young for a council member and known for her analytical thinking. They trained their crew to face certain death. And the crew never hesitated, never broke, never surrendered. They fought to the last moment and turned their own destruction into a weapon. Exactly, Vex then said. And this is not unusual. Every human warship crew trains for these scenarios every 3 months. They practice constantly for situations that we would think are impossible to survive. The military commander stood in the observer section. Council members, as a military analyst, I need to stress something. Human combat thinking is not about achieving victory with few losses. It is about achieving victory regardless of losses. This is something we have never seen before in galactic warfare. Barbaric, one council member muttered. Effective, the commander countered. Humans have been in 6 major military conflicts since joining the galactic community. They have won all 6, often against larger forces. Now we understand why. Vex then brought up his final presentation. Council members, I have compared humans with other space-traveling species. The Velothians build efficient ships and fight with precision. The Krellians rely on numbers and aggression. The Tertullians use advanced technology and superior firepower. Every species tries to maximize their advantage while minimizing their losses. He paused for effect. Humans do something different. They maximize their ability to absorb losses and continue fighting. They have made a weapon out of refusing to quit. Council Prime Severeth looked troubled. Ambassador, what are you recommending? I am recommending that the Council recognize humanity as a major military power, regardless of their fleet size or technology level. A single human warship is more dangerous than our models suggest because it will fight, long past the point where other ships would surrender or be destroyed. You are saying we should fear them, another council member said. I am saying we should respect them, Vex then corrected. And we should be very careful about ever becoming their enemy. His aide stood. If I may add, council members, there is another aspect we discovered. The human crew's morale never broke, even facing certain death. We interviewed dozens of crew members. Every one of them had complete faith in their ship, their training, and their fellow crew. Human warships do not just have physical toughness. They have mental toughness. How? Zelnara asked. How do they maintain morale when they train for such terrible scenarios? Vex then thought back to his conversations aboard the Defiant. Because they believe in something Captain Hayes called purpose. They accept that combat will be terrible, casualties will be high, and victory will be costly. But they also believe that the cause is worth the cost. Every human volunteer in their military has made peace with the possibility of death. It makes them extremely dangerous. Councilmember Draltok stood. Ambassador, are you recommending we change our military thinking to match the humans? No, Vex then said firmly. That would be impossible. Human military thinking is built on parts of their psychology that we simply do not share. They have a cultural acceptance of sacrifice that is unique to them. We cannot copy it, nor should we try. Then what do? Council Prime Severeth asked. We adjust our threat assessments, Vex then replied. We recognize that human military capability is not measured by ship count or technology level. It is measured by their willingness to take losses that would break other species. In any future conflict planning, We must account for the fact that a human force will fight longer, harder, and with more determination than similar forces from other species. He brought up a final chart. Our War Games division has run simulations. In a conflict between Keltharian and human forces of equal size and technology, humans win 73% of scenarios. The main variable is their willingness to accept casualties that we consider catastrophic. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Council members talked among themselves, their voices rising. Council Prime Severith called for order. Ambassador Vex, then. Does humanity know that we were assessing their military capabilities? They are not foolish, Council Prime. Captain Hayes knew exactly why we requested the inspection. I believe he showed us exactly what he wanted us to see, which was a warning, Vex then said simply. He was telling us in the clearest way possible that human warships are not to be taken lightly. They are built to take damage, their crews are trained for disaster, and they will fight to the death if necessary. Selnara spoke up. So this inspection, which we thought would give us intelligence advantage, was actually humans demonstrating their capabilities as a deterrent. That is my assessment. Yes. Council Prime Severith sat back in his chair, looking older than he had at the start. Ambassador, you said at the beginning that this information might be disturbing. I understand.